Ducati is facing a major threat ahead of the new MotoGP era in 2027. Gigi Dall'Igna has surprisingly admitted that some of the crucial archives and data that have long been Ducati's weapons for maintaining its dominance simply cannot be carried over directly when the new 850 cubic centimeters engine regulations take effect. If the data from Ducati's championship-winning era is truly no longer relevant, could this be a sign that Ducati's dominance is coming to an end and a new era of MotoGP is about to begin? Let's discuss. MotoGP is preparing to enter one of the biggest regulatory changes in recent years. Starting in the 2027 season, engine capacity will be reduced from 1,000 cubic centimeters to 850 cubic centimeters. In addition, ride height and hole shot devices will be banned. Aerodynamic regulations will become stricter, fuel limits will be tightened, and Michelin will be replaced by Pirelli as the sole tyre supplier. For Ducati, these changes mean much more than simply replacing the engine or reducing the size of aerodynamic components. Over the past few seasons, Ducati has become the dominant force in MotoGP. The Borgo Panigale-based manufacturer has built an extremely competitive bike that has become one of the main benchmarks on the grid. However, as the 2027 era approaches, almost the entire technical foundation that has supported Ducati's advantage will have to be reassessed. Gigi Dall'Igna has even openly acknowledged that there is not much from the current bike that can be carried directly into the next generation. According to Dall'Igna, the combination of a different engine capacity, new tyres, and the ban on ride height devices means Ducati will have to build a fundamentally new motorcycle. The statement may sound simple from a technical perspective, but its implications are enormous. Ducati will have to leave behind many of the solutions it has spent years refining through thousands of testing and racing laps. The most obvious change will, of course, come in the engine department. Starting in 2027, MotoGP engine capacity will drop from 1,000 cubic centimeters to 850 cubic centimeters. Bore diameter will also be restricted to prevent manufacturers from simply recovering the lost power by dramatically increasing engine revs. This change will affect far more than peak power. The engine's overall character will also change, including throttle response, corner exit acceleration, engine braking, fuel consumption, and the way riders manage traction. This means the motorcycle Ducati has developed around the characteristics of a 1,000 cubic centimeters engine will have to be adapted almost from the ground up. A MotoGP bike is not simply a collection of components working independently. The engine, chassis, electronics, aerodynamics, ride height systems, and tyres must all work together as one complete package. When several of these key elements change at the same time, older data can no longer be used in exactly the same way as before. One of the most interesting changes is the ban on ride height devices. This technology has been one of the key innovations in the development of modern MotoGP, and Ducati has been among the manufacturers at the forefront of its development. These devices allow the motorcycle to optimize load distribution and traction under certain conditions, particularly during starts and acceleration. Ducati spent years developing the technology until it became an important part of the character and performance of its motorcycles. However, starting in 2027, the technology will no longer be permitted. Ducati is not simply losing a device it has relied on. It must also develop a new concept without depending on solutions that have been part of its motorcycle's DNA for years. Ironically, the manufacturer that once stood at the forefront of developing this technology will now have to leave it behind. This highlights just how radical the changes introduced by the new regulations will be. If the engine changes are clearly visible from the outside, the switch in tyre suppliers is a much more difficult change for viewers to understand. Starting in 2027, Michelin will leave MotoGP and Pirelli will become the sole tyre supplier. For a MotoGP team, tyre characteristics have a huge influence on the overall design of the bike. Ducati has spent years developing its bikes with a deep understanding of how Michelin tyres behave. Its engineers know how the bike needs to work when grip becomes available, how the tyres respond to temperature, and how to maintain performance throughout a race. Once those tyres are replaced, the relationship between the bike and the tyres will have to be learned all over again. Marc Marquez also offered an interesting perspective on the 2027 MotoGP bike after riding the new generation prototype. According to him, the change in character will not come solely from the 850 cubic centimetres engine, but also from the switch to Pirelli tyres and the restrictions on aerodynamics. Marquez believes the new bikes will have a significantly different character compared with the current 1,000 cubic centimetres machines, meaning riders and teams will have to adapt all over again from scratch. Marquez also believes the new regulations could make the competition more exciting. With simpler aerodynamics and a different bike character, overtaking opportunities could increase, and the gap between manufacturers could become smaller. That is why Marquez's first-hand experience riding the 2027 prototype provides an important insight into how these major changes could affect MotoGP competition. Despite facing major changes, Ducati is not entering the new era empty-handed. The Italian manufacturer began developing and testing its 850 cubic centimetres prototype well before the new regulations officially take effect. Michele Pirro has been one of the riders carrying out Ducati's testing program. The prototype was tested without the ride height device that will eventually be banned. The initial results were reportedly quite positive, giving Ducati confidence to continue development. Dall'Igna himself gave a positive assessment of the prototype. According to him, his first impression of the bike was very good, with various components working as expected and providing a solid foundation for the next phase of testing. During testing at Mugello, Niccolò Bulega was also reportedly able to show competitive pace on Ducati's 850 cubic centimetres prototype. This proves that the project is not simply a plan on paper, but has already become a serious part of Ducati's strategy for facing the 2027 season. However, this early performance cannot yet be considered a guarantee that Ducati will dominate again. All manufacturers still have time to develop their respective bikes, and the true shape of the new competition will only become clear once every team enters the new regulatory era under the same rules. This is where Dall'Igna's statement about a clean sheet becomes particularly interesting. For an engineer, the opportunity to start from scratch can be extremely valuable. They no longer have to preserve old solutions simply because those solutions worked in the past. When regulations force the entire system to change, engineers gain an opportunity to develop new concepts without being overly tied to compromises from the past. They can redefine the direction of the engine, chassis, aerodynamics, electronics, and weight distribution based on the requirements of the latest regulations. However, there is a major irony behind that statement. Ducati may lose many of the technical tools that have helped make it dominant, but it will not lose the experience that built that dominance in the first place. Ultimately, the 850 cubic centimetres era could mark the beginning of the end of Ducati's dominance, or it could give the Italian manufacturer an opportunity to take the lead again in an entirely new way. What do you think? Will Ducati still dominate MotoGP in 2027, or will the new era produce a new champion? Let's know your opinion in the comments below.